And I'll say this, I'm a person who will change things in the moment.
Which is fine.
Which has to be, but then if this communication isn't set, then it's not going down. Like if there was a prior, if we already have a relationship and then I know this MD is going to catch me, then I'm more comfortable with being able to go, okay, the Spirit's leading me to, hey, let's quiet from now. I have a scripture to read or I want to do whatever. I'm a person who engages the audience. So this relationship with the MD has to be set before even giving me that comfort to know, I can do this.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's very important too.
All right, well, welcome back to the AWI podcast. This is a time for authentic conversations about worship, church leadership, and theology. And today, I have both Aretha and Zach. They've previously been on the podcast. So woohoo! Today, we will be talking about how to best work together as the music director and the worship leader. Both of them have experience in this realm. And so I guess my first question is, what does that look like? What does conversation inside church and outside of church look like?
For a music director and a worship leader. First, can I just say how cute we are with our matching shirts? For those who are listening, I'm sorry you can't see this, but we stepped into this room looking real cute together unintentionally. Just had to make that known.
Yes.
That just shows the relationship. And that point is there's a natural relationship that occurs between the worship leader and the music director. It has to happen that way. Otherwise, especially in the church setting, you just attitudes. I was just talking to my brother about this. He's a drummer at a church. And if it's different when you're in a secular setting, I guess, for lack of a better word, but you do a gig with somebody and it didn't go that smooth or you had a hard interaction. Like I do music directing stuff for outside stuff, like cover band things or a wedding or whatever. And you don't necessarily have to see that player again next Sunday. But church is a little different because you do, for the most part, you keep the same rotation of players and the same rotation of leaders and the music directors change and all that stuff. So you really got to approach it a little bit more tenderly because you will be seeing them again next week. Right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I do approach it a little bit differently sometimes than I do just your outside one-off pop gig or something like that. And so how I play that out, I don't know. I think it would probably be, I try to listen more than, I try to be more curious than furious. That's that's a phrase that I've been catching on to right now that I read in some book. And just be curious about why do you want to do it this way? Okay, why I recommend this? That conversation needs to happen. It also needs to happen before you get on stage. Because that I've noticed recently, been in some situations where you get to the stage and then no decisions on form and style and even key has been thought through until that moment, and you're like, oh man, and then you're wasting time. Now you got frustrated players who are just like, what key is it? Y'all don't even know where you're going, let alone how can you help direct us?
How can you lead?
Yeah. So having some of those communicational points done out as far in advance between a music director and a worship leader will definitely make your Sunday experience much smoother for sure. Yeah. But I could go deeper into that, but I want to let her get on the conversation.
I think as a worship leader, working with a musical director, I think communication, as he said, is number one. There's no way, even if you don't necessarily like this person, which has happened, not you, but you don't necessarily like this person that you have to work with, there is just a natural respect that has to be there. And I think there's speaking from a worship leader standpoint, even with what Zach just said, there's a very necessary knowing what you want to do, settling in yourself what you want to do before I even get to the musical director. Because I know I've been in places where when I was a first worship leader, I was like, I don't know, what do you want to do? It was undecided. And so that made for a lot of indecision as the whole rehearsal was indecisive. So I know at this point, even when I'm hiring a musical director and I'm working as a vocalist myself, I have to sit with myself and go, okay, so what key do I want this in? How fast do I want this? Do I want to do this bridge or not? Do I want to do the chorus from this song? And then being able to fully communicate that with the musical director. Even if he or she does not want to do that, I have to take the time to know for myself what do I want to do? How do I see me leading this team to then go, okay, here's my plans. How can we make a plan together? I think it really starts with me getting clear so that we can have clarity.
Yes, and same thing on this end. I think it starts with me getting clear on, do I know these songs, right? So usually, whether I'm playing as an MD or not, I go through and I try to practice the song, or at least get an idea of how the song goes, how the chords move. Because then, when keys do change, you're going to be the first person they look to be like, well, how? Okay, now what? Now, where's the chord now? You know, like that. And so, if I've already thought ahead of the form, or not even the form, if I thought ahead the details of the song, then it makes it a little bit easier in that thing. So I got to do my homework like that, just like she has to do her homework before setting together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. I'm a person who will change things in the moment.
Which is fine.
Which has to be, but then if this communication isn't set, then it's not going down. You know, like if there was a prior, if we already have a relationship and then I know this MD is going to catch me, then I'm more comfortable with being able to go, okay, the Spirit's leading me to, hey, let's quiet for a minute. I have a scripture to read or I want to do whatever. I'm a person who like engages the audience. So there has to, this relationship with the MD has to be set before even giving me that comfort to know, oh, I can do this.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's very important too.
That's really good.
Yeah,
because like she said, I think things will change and it should change. Like just because G sounded good in the shower doesn't mean it's going to sound good. You know what I mean? When you get to stage, and so again, the music director needs to be aware of that song so well that if it key changes, everybody's gonna have a moment of freak out. Like I learned it in this key. You know, there's gonna be a moment of that, but you need to be able to have the most wherewithal and the most like cool and collectiveness in that moment to be like, okay, well then therefore this is gonna be the change now, and okay, the lick goes like this now because it's in this key. Stuff like that needs to be. But you can't know that unless you really internalize the song. Yeah.
Totally. And thinking of like on a Sunday during a service and before, like in rehearsal and stuff, what is specifically the role of the music director, and then what is the role of the worship leader in those specific moments?
The worship leader to me is leading worship. There's I've said it before, a worship leader is a very difficult position because there's pre-planning of the songs. There's a vertical, like, God, what do you want me? What is the Spirit leading me to do in these 20 minutes? Or, whether it's scripture, whether it's, I just want to go right into this chorus, whatever, how we're going from song to song, that has to be there. But at the same time, if you're singing with an ensemble, you got to keep, they're off harmonies. Wait, Tina, you're singing the wrong note. Like there's, and then also having to sometimes feed the words to the audience, or being able to, they're not singing with me. Hold on, come on, you guys sing this with me. Being able, there's so many things that you're, as well as trying to communicate with the musical director of, okay, I need to go, I want this song to just go straight in, So there's so many things in the moment that you're leading, you're literally the leader of what's going on. And then the pastors also, you're kind of the liaison between the pastor and the congregation, and whether it's conversations before, we even get to rehearsal, with the pastor of what's the theme of the message. Maybe we can pick songs around it. So it's a lot of leading. You are a leader, and I think that's servant leadership, because you're not just leading, here I am, but there's, I'm serving all these people in the moment, as well as, Father, what do you want me to do at this moment? So you're a servant leader as a worship leader.
Yeah, and as the music director, you're trying, at least for me, you're trying to make that as easy as possible for the leader. So you're trying to smooth out those transitions if they need to happen or when they're happening. So you're just, for me, that's how it was too when I was on pop gigs on the road. It was just like, how do I make it so the leader doesn't have to think as much as possible? They're still going to have all that to think about, because it is very important, especially in worship, to let them be able to interact with the audience. Yeah. So it is hard to do all of that at once and then be worried. Like I haven't had to sing and lead solo by myself, but I would only imagine, and you can attest to this, that it's got to be terrible to be like, I'm trying to lead and I'm trying to interact with the congregation and get people involved, but then I got to worry about the keys and is the keyboard playing that right? Like, shoot, here comes the key changes, like all those things. Like, are they ready for that? The key change is coming. Are they ready? Like that, you can't think about all that stuff. So ideally, you think about that as the leader before, but then when it comes to game time, we want to allow them to just really interact and worship, and then let her, because like she was saying, there's all those different arrows that are pulling her, but to thin it out and let her just do more of the one-on-one with God and how is he speaking in this moment. So trying to pull those other things off the chest of the leader to make that as smooth as possible is the goal. So that might mean, for instance, this just happened last week, so it's come up. The worship leader is great, awesome, charismatic as far as like good with people and all that, which is a trait you need to be up there. But was this like, okay, how do I get to the next song, right? And technically that's not their responsibility to worry about like how to make one song. Some like doing that, some don't. And so it was cool because he really leaned on me to be like, Zach, help us figure out how to go from this to this, so then I can go back to doing what I do, right? What he does is interact with people and worship and sing and get everybody on the same page. How do I keep that flowing as smooth as possible? I feel is my job.
Yeah.
And let me say, this is not everybody's mindset.
Oh, no,
I've been
wasn't
with musical directors who think they're the leader.
Oh, yeah.
And they go, no, I don't play in that key.
Yeah.
Or no, that song cannot go into this one. And you're just like, but I would like it to. Or, or can you play this? No, we're not doing that.
And
so
I learned that over time, like the hard way too, of being like shutting people down and saying, no, we can't do that, or no. But then I noticed it is in your best interest if the leader does say, I want to go from that song to this song, and you're like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's not gonna work. Those are two different tempos. Those are different keys. But then you go, okay, let's try. Let's figure it out. Then you go back to the keyboard player. Hey, how do I do this? I can't figure out how to get that key to this key. And you go, how do you think that could work? And then you present it like this. And oftentimes this would happen too on the pop gig. It was like, oh no, actually I don't like that.
Yeah.
Right. But at least you tried.
You tried.
And so
appreciate the attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about those conversations? So say, for example, whether that is switching between a song to a different song, or if you have, or even if you're literally in the middle of a service and the worship leader feels led to go into a song that actually wasn't even planned. How then do you communicate that when you're in the moment and like eyes are on you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as the worship leader, they just go sometimes. And so they can only go as far as they feel capable of their music director and team, though, right? Not just the music director, just their team in general. So I think a good worship leader will know that, like, I can only stretch this thing too far before it turns into a train wreck, right? But a leader who feels capable with their team would be like, I can go to any song that kind of pops into my head. And I've been in those situations when they do, and they're just like, we're doing this, and they're like, I want to do I Love You, Lord. And without even telling us, they just, I love you, Lord. And you're like, okay. Right?
They don't figure out the chords.
So usually if you have a talk back as an MD or anybody in the band does, you start quickly going, okay, she's here, and she's in E. Okay, she's in E. Okay, the chord is 1. Okay, 4. Next chord 6, 5. And that's how it happens on the fly. And a lot of times.
I've had moments where I've had to either I don't trust the team and I don't feel comfortable, I can't do this, or I don't trust the team and we're just gonna do it a cappella. They'll follow me or they won't.
Totally.
And that's a call too. As an MD I've done before where I'm like, if we try to get into this song with her, it's not gonna work. So you know what? And I'll just say, hey guys, we're just gonna do it a cappella. Let's just let her have it, or something like that.
And that's totally fine. But there's even as a worship leader, if I'm feeling being led somewhere, but I don't feel like it's gonna work or it's uncomfortable, like I think it's okay to be like, we'll try it next service, or something where I can actually discuss it, or just doing it a cappella. But there is that moment where we hope that there's a team behind that will go with you, but sometimes it's not always.
Yeah, sometimes a train wreck. So this is life, but
Yeah, and in the moment, whether, like, I don't know if you've ever experienced as an MD where you feel a nudge to go somewhere, and like, do you feel like you can speak up about that? Do you feel like the worship leader can follow you in some moments?
If you can communicate on the spot. So this is all assuming somebody has in-ears.
Correct.
Right, and then you can talk to them in their head. Then yes, there's times again, I'm reminded of pop touring that I was on where the vocalist wouldn't come in on time. And I'd be like, we're in the verse. And even feed them lyrics sometimes.
That's helpful.
Where they kind of like...
Totally.
Then, right?
Yeah, I've been fed lyrics before.
Which I'm not really good at, but I know that is something that can be done. Is you can feed lyrics.
Yeah.
Or reminders if need be. If for some reason there's no slate, you can remind them that the chorus is coming, things like that. So there is that time. And then there is times where I've said, let's just like let this simmer. Like just let it be for a little bit musically, or like, hey, let's do a guitar solo. Like, take a break. Let's do a guitar. Thinking of a pop wedding I just did a couple weeks ago. Vocalists look back at me like, another chorus? And I'm like, no, guitar. Let's just do a guitar solo. Give yourself a break and let him shred for a minute. You know.
Nice.
So it does happen like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I think sometimes in the church we are divided by singer and musicians. Whereas it took me like seeing another genre, jazz, to recognize, oh, I'm also a part of the band. We're all collaborating, creating something in this moment.
That's cool.
And I think we have to get to that as a church of like, I'm not singer and then these people, or these people and singer, you know, but we're like all collaborating to create something where the Spirit wants to lead in that moment. And so it has to be like, if the MD feels, oh, we should go this way, well then, okay, we'll have, maybe there's a discussion, maybe there's not, but he's a part of the team as well as me. And so there has to be that ability to respect what other people want to bring to the table for the team.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Totally. Well, and there's, even like, is all the band like harmonizing with one another? Like, is anyone stepping on anybody's toes?
Yeah.
Like, are the melodic instruments like playing the melody, and are the rhythmic instruments like sticking to the rhythm, or are they stepping on each other's toes? But then same like vocally of like, is the harmony trying to overpower the melody? Like, and are you guys meshing? But then there's like, when you talk about jazz too, there's that interaction between often the vocals and the instruments that is really beautiful, where it's even like you come up with some melody and then the keyboardist like picks it up. And I actually love when that happens in worship too, of like, say the worship leader goes a little spontaneous and the keyboardist like recognize like, oh, it's this melody, and like you hear it in songs all the time, and even when it's like they actually wrote it. And I just think that's so beautiful in such a way where that can complement one another as well. And then it's like even if you stop singing, it's like the melody's still being played so often, then the congregation is led into, they continue to sing even if like you don't. And I think those are beautiful moments.
But there has to be that maturity of everyone seeing we're a team. It's not the keyboardist and everybody else, or the singer and everybody else, or whoever, the MD and everybody else. Like, it's everybody. We're equally a part. Depending, everybody's got various levels of, especially at a church, various levels of skill level. Everybody's not on the same skill level all the time, but still we're all a team in that moment. So but it has to be, everyone has to see it that way.
But it's important because the congregation feels that. They know when the team is a team. They can tell.
Totally.
And so therefore they'll want to interact more. I feel like they'll get involved more if they feel like, oh, they're doing this as a unit. And like, so that's kind of one thing I'm working on at our church, is trying to make it more united on stage, so that way, because right now I'm mad at my congregation. They are not doing enough. They are not moving enough. They're not clapping enough. And before I can be like, how do we change that culture? I just can't go up to all these random people and try to
be like, come on, guys, come on,
kick some Pentecostalism. I can't do that, right? But I'm like, well, if I can get a team that's so unified and having such a good time on stage,
that they want to join in,
and create a new like culture. So I'm trying to work on that right now. But that's a job, I feel.
That's hard. And even like, I think as a worship leader, it can be discouraging when you feel the Lord and like you're singing passionately, but it's like they're not following. And you're like, there's something happening in this room. Like, like pick it up.
But if the team is with you and they all feel it, at least you can get off stage and be like, that was
y'all
feel that? Maybe they didn't even get that, but we got it. And,
Totally. And so even when thinking of like how important it is for a team to be unified, how do you practically create that culture within the team?
That's hard.
Right.
That's hard. On MDing on a touring situation, it's different because you have a lot of time together and it just naturally
shared
happens.
experiences.
Y'all going to get food together, you're whatever, playing basketball, whatever you're doing. Doing life. It's just like you don't have to force it, it's happening, right? So you figure it out. and then that's when you also find out if people don't fit, right? Because you're like, you are not working with our lifestyle that we got going. So it is hard to find that out, and like, are these people working when you only see them on Sundays or once a week? Yeah, you're like, I don't know if this is the right fit. So that is, I'm currently dealing with that myself too. That's really difficult because everybody nowadays is so busy, and so what I'm trying to do is as simple as just a little bit more group text. So for me, so as soon as I find out who the group's going to be for Sunday, as soon as we live, just text, hey guys, looking forward to you next Sunday or coming up on blah, blah, blah. I'll get the songs to you as soon as we know what they are, working with the leader to figure that out and just start that. So for sure by Wednesday, I've tried to start conversation and put all of us in a group text too, because there was a couple of times, and I got this from another MD friend of mine, and I liked how they did that because that's like, you feel like you're friends if you got each other's phone numbers via text, right? And then at the end of the day, at the end of the gig, at the end of the Sunday, even if you didn't know that person, you're like, oh, which number was yours? Like that kind of thing starts. It happens a lot in secular gigs, outside gigs. We don't do that as much. It's just everything's in planning center.
Right.
In church world. So I try to get that text conversation going. Currently, that's all I got. That's to answer your question. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah. I say this church, the church I currently go to, there is such a bond that like we had a big something happen at our church, and we were a big old church, and then it shrunk. But the music department is so bonded right now. And I think it's because we went through that hard thing as a church, and everybody who stayed just like locked in. So I think it was going through a something together that locked everybody in. And we just became like, people celebrate people leaving, celebrate baby showers. Like there's such a celebratory group. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, well, they throw a lunch, they throw a dinner. So they
That's
throw
beautiful.
And celebrate the smallest to the biggest things for each other. We take a picture after every service. Or after.
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah, we take a picture.
Stolen, noted.
Because everybody, they'll say, oh, everybody were wearing orange and white today, or we're wearing jean and white. And so even though the worship team changes every week, but every Sunday you see, oh, this Sunday, this group took a picture. And, oh, they're wearing jean. Aren't they cute? Like, it just becomes this bonding. And then, we have 3 services. So between services, everybody sits together and they make breakfast for us. And so everybody's like catching up between services, eating together.
Yeah.
So I think that, and it's such a tight group that I haven't experienced that in a long time, where everybody's like family. So those are some ideas.
That's great. The food, food always works.
The food, come on.
Churches that I've been a part of where there's a moment to have food, and when they've got somebody blessing us with food, that always helps. So along the lines of that is the green room interaction is probably the most of that. People just sharing their life with one another in the green room. So I know they probably, without saying it, I definitely look forward to that moment.
Yeah.
And that can be enough if your team doesn't change too much, and it's like they kind of look forward to just catching back up every Sunday with one another. That's more than I hang out with some of my own personal close friends,
Right.
So that could be enough.
Yeah. Does your church have multiple services?
They do. They have 2. Just 2 right now. Well,
nice.
3 normally, 2 right now.
Nice.
Because in summertime, like there's a big vacation crew that goes. So.
Totally. Yeah, my church is experiencing like a smaller worship team
I
currently because of summer.
I really appreciate that the pastor has the wherewithal to be like, we don't need to stretch ourselves. Let's not do it.
That's
so
awesome.
he even now is like, let's go as long as we can with 2 into the fall until we feel like we have to go back
add a
to
third.
3.
Yeah. And when thinking of like team unity from my own experience, when I was in high school, I was a part of a high school ministry, and we did I think just because it was high school, we did an 11 a.m. and then a 5 p.m. And so there might have been a 9. Honestly, I forget.
You were asleep.
But what was cool is as a worship team, we would have lunch in between the services because you're not going to go home.
Right.
I mean, you can, but it's just like, why would you when you have the opportunity to just hang out and just like have fun with each other? And I found that totally bonded like our high school worship team. And today, one thing that's cool that I feel like I absolutely love, like my church is very different because we don't have the same team like ever.
Yeah.
Because we have multiple campuses, we rotate a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've created this like super unified culture where everyone knows what to expect. We get a text earlier in the week, typically like 1 or 2 days before, like this is the team group chat, like here's anything that you need to know, just heads up, and then like see you on the day of. But we actually at the campus that I'm at, we only have one service, but even with one service, we still do team time. And so we will do team time for like 15 to 20 minutes before service, after we've done rehearsal, after we've done run through, and then like people are starting to come in, and we like go into the green room, and we have 15 to 20 minutes where we have team time, and we ask a fun question, and we also provide the opportunity for any prayer requests, any life updates to just share. And I've noticed that people actually become super vulnerable because they become used to that culture, and they become used to those questions that they actually open up, and we are able to be let into each other's lives. And then it's like when you see them serving again, and then you're like, how's that situation going? Like, how are you? And then you get that update again. And I've found that is a super unifying culture. Cool. And then at the end of service, we also we call it like huddle, and where we just affirm one another at the end after the service, like what's something that I saw, like so-and-so did well, of like, hey, you're the MD, and you just kept like a steady voice in our heads of like, we knew where we were going. It was clear. And like, I really appreciated that, because even as a worship leader, like that helps me be stable, and just stuff like that. And then it just creates like, oh, I'm seen, I'm known, like people appreciate like what I bring to this team, but also beyond like what you just do, because what you do is important, but also like who you are is important. So I've even found like all of that stuff like super helpful for my church. Yeah, so there you go. There's some ideas.
What was the other one I was going to take?
Pictures.
The picture. Yeah.
Color coordinating of like clothes, I think, is also sweet team. My chapel band did that during AP, and that was so fun.
I wonder how that would go over in my culture. I grew up in that situation too. Right. Well, I'd have to just try it and see what happens.
We wearing jean and white today. Like, okay.
Never know.
Sometimes tells people to know what to wear.
Yeah.
Some people, there's some people that appreciate that. Like, thank you. I was going to stare in my closet.
All right.
Yeah. And then I have a few more questions. How do you seek the Lord as a team together? Like, okay, you get to like do a service together, but how do you actually like truly remind everyone like we're not just doing this, but this is like so for the glory of God?
Well, I think that at least for the worship leader working with maybe the other singers or ensemble, that part, I think it starts with the leaders, either worship leader or musical director, with seeking God on our own. I think that always starts.
It overflows.
What am I doing? Okay, what are the songs? How is this going with what I'm dealing with in my life and what you're speaking to me? And then how can I communicate that to the audience? But then I take that and, okay, with this group, maybe there's that scripture I'll share with them before we even get started. Or, what the Spirit's been speaking to me through the week. There's those moments even before we get up for a rehearsal, the Sunday rehearsal, or even after we've done it and we're waiting for the service to start, like that moment, guys, the Lord's been really dealing with me on this, and this is why this song is really important. Being able to share and being vulnerable about my own journey with these songs, or this time to be able to share that with them. I think because at least at my church, like the singers and the worship leader are always together, and then the band is like rehearsing and trying to, so those times when both groups come together is rare. So it's like the worship leader has more time with who's serving that Sunday. So I'll have more time with them. But then where the MD and the musicians and singers can come together is, like I said, more rare. But sometimes when that prayer time before, you can kind of share the same thing.
Yeah, I'm as the creative arts director position I have at this church right now. That's something that we're trying to create. It never really existed. Kind of it was so low key. They defaulted to everything just being low key, just fine, and not like really produced and like scheduled and on service started on time, but everything kind of before and after was really flowing. So trying to create that culture right now is interesting, and it's also I'm kind of looking forward to finding a person who can piggyback that thing with me, because I don't feel that that's my strong suit, right? And that could just me being scared, or it could just me be being like, no, that's I would really like to find somebody who really was like has something to say and wants to pour into people. You know, I'm like more pastoral.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, trying to create that. But I'm reminded because when I first took the position, I started that like team time, a team huddle, team whatever, and then it's kind of just faded away. So that's on me. I need to get back into that saddle and at least create the space. But I don't know if I need to be the one to create the conversation. Yeah. So I'm kind of looking for that person who's like that has a heart to pour into.
That's awesome.
Pour into people.
Our church has a chaplain.
Yeah.
Just for the music department. So
yeah.
you can just
that's
make
awesome.
that person.
And I was a part of a church that did have that, and that was nice. That you could kind of leave that spiritual leadership department over onto them, and then let them run with that. And then and therefore your job as a music director is just more technical, right? So I lean towards that. So I need to work on it myself, and and I do a lot on my own, but it doesn't always translate. If that's
Leading
not
a team is a little different. Yeah,
It is.
yeah. Even at my church too, we, along with the like team time and huddle and all that, right before we do rehearsal and then run through, and right before run through we have a Devo time, and typically the worship leader, or if the worship leader asks someone to bring that, and it's just like quick, like 5-10 minute moment of like either this is what I'm currently learning or what I'm currently reading, or just something that like the Lord put on my heart, and it's like super short, and I found like that is very centering. And oftentimes like it totally relates to the song. Sometimes it's like some totally random, but it like always has some sort of impact, and I found like that also really helps. But yeah, as we come to a close, this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being here, first of all. But also taking into consideration everything that we talked about and talking about the relationship between the MD and the worship leader, what is an advice that you would give to anyone listening, whether they are a musical director or a worship leader? What would you say?
I was going to say something that kind of was back to the last question you had. It's really, I'm building about the culture of the church, because they're all so very different, and I've been blessed to be able to like guest play at so many different churches since I've been a kid, so I've just kind of seen them all, and trying to figure out what that culture is for your church, and then find those things that work for your church, because like the color coordinating thing is probably not going to happen in my space.
Wouldn't happen in my
That's
space.
fine. You know what I mean? So, but what is those things? So I'm kind of searching for it now too, because I've also seen and been a part of things that feel forced. Where that team time is gross. Where everybody's like, let's get in the huddle and hold hands, and the vibe is not there at all, right? Where people are like, I'd rather just go to the bathroom. You've had me on the stage for an hour, and I haven't go to the bathroom, and now you're saying, get off your instrument and come straight to this thing. So that's, even as I'm hearing all these great examples and things that are working, aren't working, is you create that culture and find out what works for your guys' squad and what works for your personality, and then let that be your thing. It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be tightly organized, or maybe it can, but that's where I'm at. I'm like, what's the culture that it can work to get the point across, but to also keep it family friendly and feeling like you have a space to share if you need to share, because sometimes people are like, well, you didn't create any space for me to talk, and I wanted to talk, right? So I'm bad at not creating space, like creating okay, now we got 10 minutes to do nothing, like, right? Just to intentionally create that space, you know.
That's good. I would say, I think, kind of going along that line of taking care of yourself. Not only the leaders, but also kind of what Zach is saying, recognizing what's working and what's not working for my team. Even if, like, I only lead once a month, so I'm not the direct person, but even in this moment, this Sunday, what is this group dealing with? You know, that doesn't have to be emotionally or spiritually, but what is this group? What do they need from me? What do I need? And even if there's a way that I can communicate that, but I think that recognizing the teamness of it, and then how can I help that team work well? How can I be a part of that? How can I instruct them on what our team needs today, and what does our team need to go forth to make these 3 services go through? I think it starts again with me, my self-care. How am I taking care of myself through the week? How am I accessing my spiritual walk through the week? And then it goes to, okay, how can I be a part of serving with this team? What does this need? What does this service need? Even sometimes our individual services are different. 8 o'clock versus 10 o'clock versus 11:45 are 3 different types of people. So being able to be aware, it has to start with me, because there's so much that's being pulled from me. So I have to make sure I'm full and whole when I arrive. But then also being aware of this team that I'm now leading, and how can I walk alongside them, serve with them, knowing, oh, what are you dealing with? Being able to listen for that moment. There's so many things, but I think the wellness is important, and we don't talk about that sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like from both of you guys, I very much heard a self-reflection of like, where am I at? How am I doing? But then also like, who is with me? What church am I at? Like, what is our church culture? And that such like, I mean, the Lord created us uniquely, and so therefore if we're created uniquely, then everyone around us is as well. And then therefore together, this unique team is unique and different. And so then what's best for this Sunday, what's best for this moment, what's best for my church? And I think it is so different for every single space, and even like the time of year, and like the things going on in the world often too, like totally affect us all. And so I just love that you guys are both very much listening to like the Lord in that, and to like the culture. So this was so fun. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you guys next time. Hey, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of our podcast. Today, I got to talk to both Aretha and Zach about how the music director and the worship leader can best work together inside and outside of a service. If you liked this episode, press that like button and subscribe to our channel for more. We'll see you next time. Thanks!